scale of justice.
Tune in every
INEC releases timetable for political activities ahead of 2019 general elections.
The Commission fixed Saturday, 16th February 2019 as the date for Presidential and National Assembly elections.
Farmers herdsmen conflicts. Federal government to convene stakeholders conference on infrastructural and agricultural development.
Nigeria police make another breakthrough, parades 19 suspected kidnappers.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on Nigeria's mission to evacuate Nigerian migrants in Libya.
Now let's begin by looking at, of course, media reports on the enslavement of irregular Nigerian migrants in Libya. The federal government constituted a fact-finding team headed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs to, among other objectives, identify those irregular Nigerian migrants in Libya, of course, with a view to evacuating them back to the country for reintegration or rehabilitation and reintegration with their families.
Now, in line with the presidential directive, the team traveled to Libya and spent some days interfacing with various agencies and officials of the government of Libya to facilitate the mass evacuation. Now,
the team also visited 5 detention camps in Jongtung and Zhengzhou to identify the number of Nigerians who were trapped in the North African country. Of course, those of them who are desirous of returning home.
Now, reports indicate that over 5,000 Nigerian irregular migrants have been identified so far by the presidential team. And, of course, the purpose is to evacuate them back to Nigeria. And out of the 5,000, about 1,000 of them are said to have been returned to the country.
Indeed, but there are questions to be asked, including how long will it take the team to evacuate those irregular Nigerian migrants from Libya? And would also be asking how challenging is the evacuation process, and is it feasible to evacuate all the, of course, identified irregular Nigerian migrants within the specified or stipulated period by the government? How cooperative are, in fact, the Libyan authorities in helping to facilitate the evacuation process of those irregular Nigerian migrants involved? Kingsley, these are some of our talking points.
That's right. We'll also be looking at what lessons the various agencies would learn from this, including, of course, Nigerians at large, particularly those who often get misguided and misled into thinking that there are greener pastures beyond our shores. In particular, they have seen how perilous the land journey is to Europe and, of course, across the Mediterranean, where several persons have also been reported to have been drowned.
Indeed, Kingsley, if you look at the figures that have come out so far between the male and the female, irregular Nigerian migrants, almost balancing, each other out. And there are quite a number of Nigerians. You will begin to imagine what exactly is pushing Nigerians out of the country.
Thousands and thousands of able-bodied young men and women. All right, so those are some of the issues we'll be taking a look at in our discussion segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. We have guests with us here in the Abuja studios. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of the program.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak, always thanking you, of course, for joining us on this program and making it your breakfast show every day. To all of you, we're very, very grateful for that. And in the course of our program, as always, we have the other segments that make up this program. First, we'll be also looking at the business. We'll be looking at newspaper review, arts and entertainment, and of course, sports and development from our foreign scene. As always, we'll take the news first here, and Joseph Johnson is our news guy this morning. Joseph, get on with it.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, and thanks for joining us. To find lasting solutions to frequent conflicts between farmers and cattle rearers, the presidency is coming up with a conference of stakeholders on infrastructural and agricultural development to put in place a plan and for immediate relief and long-term solution to the clashes. The conference will tap into The conference will tap into experiences and best practices to draw up planned development 20 to 30 years ahead based on population and development projections, and will take into consideration environmental impact. A statement by Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, says the President is deeply sympathizes with the families and all other direct and indirect victims of the violence in Benue State and other parts of the country, and is determined to bring it to an end. The President seeks to support the cooperation of all citizens and the media in particular to join hands with his administration to find permanent solutions and not to aggravate or escalate tensions in all conflict areas of the country. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari engaged Governor Samuel Otom on the best way to resolve the conflicts. The meeting put to rest speculations in certain quarters over the action or inaction of the federal government to address the situation. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture is to partner with the Nigerian Army towards addressing conflict between farmers and herdsmen in the country. This is coming as the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Audu Ogbe, inaugurates a ranch for livestock in Abuja. It is to serve as a replica of Herders' Colony introduced by the federal government.
We are tasking our Special Forces Brigade to ensure that everywhere they are deployed, because they are deployed across the country at short notice, to ensure that they stem this menace or the conflict between the herders and farmers.
We don't need to roam and get into all the crises and the conflicts and the killings.
President Muhammadu Buhari says there is no justification whatsoever for anyone to dare the desert and the Mediterranean Sea on a dangerous mission of seeking greener pasture. The president was speaking at an audience with a special envoy of President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. He said with the abundant opportunities in the country, people must learn to stay at home and find ways of improving their personal economy for a meaningful living. The Nigerian police have paraded 19 suspects in connection with various alleged criminal acts along Abuja-Kaduna Highway. A statement from False Police Relations Officer CSP Jimo Moshood said the suspects were alleged to have kidnapped one Imam Hakim Kosoko and others on the road. He stated that most of the suspects were said to have been arrested in the act after exchange of gunfire with the personnel of the IGP Intelligence Response Team attached to Operation Absolute Sanity in their hideout along Kaduna-Abuja Road. 4 victims were rescued from their captivity and have been reunited with their families. The suspects will be arraigned in court for prosecution on completion of investigation. The force PRO said the Nigeria Police Force remains committed to guarantee adequate protection of lives and property of Nigerians. All political parties are to commence campaigns for the presidential and National Assembly elections on the 18th of October 2018, while campaigns for governorship and state assembly elections are to begin on the 1st of December 2018. Chairman of Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, made this known in Abuja while releasing the electoral calendar for the 2019 general elections.
2019 are the date for presidential and National Assembly elections, while governorship and state assembly elections will hold on 2nd March 2019.
And finally, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, is determined to get it right in the conduct of the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME. A meeting of stakeholders is underway to consolidate on the gains and challenges of the 2017 experience to strategize for 2018.
We must brief them to tell them of what we have seen, to review what happened in 2017, and to take their views about what we should change.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Claire and Kinsley. Stay with us.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive, be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Imagine a nation where tribalism and ethnic groups cease to be the mainstay of our reasoning.
Are you not an Igbo boy?
Of course, yeah.
Why then are you talking about proposing to a Yoruba girl? Or are you out of your senses?
If you are in Benin and your nephews are Ijo, will you kill them?
If I see two people from different tribes together, I don't like it. Cha-cha!
Let us marry ourselves and make our nation great.
Where they come from doesn't matter. What matters is how they feel towards each other.
We are getting there, but a lot still needs to be done. So we at Professor John Bull have found the perfect solution in this episode titled Saving Nigeria, and laugh like never before.
If I can't give you some cash, you say make you dash me some cash for my phone where I never flash because my economy crash, eh? You gonna give me?
Now they thought this is not a flash, they talk inside you.
That's what it is.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow,
the largest data network. Glow Unlimited.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, the Made in Nigeria campaign. In the midst of unprecedented multiple challenges, our great country Nigeria, as Africa's largest economy, is surely marching on to a new era of all-round prosperity, especially through re-engineered and diversified economy, powerfully driven by the change agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR.
We will patronize local entrepreneurs. We will promote the manufacturing powerhouses. Our objective is to make Nigeria a new manufacturing hub.
It is not time to complain. It is time to join the campaign. It is time for economic recovery, growth and diversification of our economy by Made in Nigeria.
Hello, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and we're broadcasting live from the network service of the NTA. Let's talk a bit of business now. We understand following 100 billion naira revenue shortfall, the federal government orders contractors to show tax identification numbers, that's TIN, before payment. Let's join Joy Uzo for more on business news.
Welcome to Business News. The federal government has ordered vendors of ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs, to display their tax identification numbers, TINs, on their invoices before payments are effected by the MDAs. The federal government's directive is contained in a memo titled Compliance with Tax Payments by Federal Government Vendors. The order is part of resolute efforts by the government to block revenue leakages by the vendors of MDAs. About 100 billion naira has been discovered as tax revenue shortfall by contractors between 2012 and 2017. The minister disclosed that persistent leakages in revenue remittances by vendors had been uncovered by the government's Project Lighthouse, a system-wide revenue intelligence data warehouse. The leakages, according to her, were due to lack of TIN, particularly on value-added tax, VAT, withholding tax and other related inflows into the government coffers. She added that the directive to the government vendors is in compliance with the provisions of both the Federal Inland Revenue Service and Procurement Acts of 2007. In a statement signed by Special Advisor, Media and Communications to the Minister, Oluyinka Akintunde, the minister stated that spot checks would be undertaken on MDAs to confirm compliance with the directive. Moving on now, an economic analyst, Reverend Levi Johnson, has commended recent achievements in agriculture with reference to recent publication by the Financial Derivatives Company that Nigeria is rated the second largest producer of sorghum. To surpass the trend, he urged relevant stakeholders to avoid complacency, called for introduction of zero-interest loan for farmers, and that the loans be given to willing minds who are ready to venture into farming, first of all to put food on the tables of Nigerians before considering exports. Finally, equities market maintains uptrend as the NSE All-Share Index firms up by 1.29% to close above 40,000 basis points psychological line. We now bring you the graphic summary. That's business news. I am Joy Uzo.
All right, many thanks, Joy. Let's move on now with newspaper review coming up right now.
our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios for today's edition of the newspaper review. Bayo, morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's start off with, okay, I'll start off with the Punch newspaper, and it leads with the story, Benue Nasarawa governments disagree on killer herdsman's location. And two riders there, of course you said, the second one that says, NLC, TUC demand the arrest of serial killers. And this picture story again of arrests and parading of some kidnappers, suspected kidnappers by the Nigerian police. And there you see, of course, the force public relations officer there. And also the story on the Benue killings takes a front page report on the Daily Independent. It says Benue killings, Tom reveals whereabouts of attackers. It comes with two riders. Rejects federal government's proposed cattle colonies. Herdsmen kill police inspector and sergeant. And Buhari orders IGP to move to Benue. Herdsmen, farmers crisis, not Buhari's making. That's coming from the presidency. And death toll rises to 25 in Nasarawa herdsmen attack. Details of that on page A4. Let's take it from Casey.
All right, that's still on the herdsmen farmers clashes, especially in Benue. That's the lead story for this day newspaper. Just below the nameplate of this day, it says, Presidency absolves Buhari of herdsmen killings and blames crisis on demographic changes. With a number of riders, the federal government plans stakeholder conference as Autumn rejects cattle colonies. And two policemen killed in Benue ambush, and IG relocates to Makurdi. And military arrests state-sponsored armed gang. Benue denies sponsoring militia. That's for this day newspaper. Now, it's also the lead story that's on the front page of Blueprint. Blueprint says, Army arrests 9 militiamen linked to Benue government. But 4 riders to that headline. It's not true. According to Autumn, who is governor of Benue, and suspected herdsmen killed 2 cops in Logo. That's also in Benue. And Buhari relocates IG relocates to Benue. Speak up, Southern senators tell elder statesmen. That's the story there. And then at the foot of the front page of the New Telegraph, you have the story there as a second lead, just below the photograph before we come to the ones on the election. That's at the foot of the front page of New Telegraph. APC governors clash over herdsmen killings. Autumn, that's the first rider, Nasarawa harboring killers. Another rider, Amakura, who is governor of Nasarawa. Your law, cause of massacre. That's on page 6. Bye.
Well, let's start with the controversy. Governor Autumn was saying that those who were committing the atrocities are habited in an area he called Tungua in Awi local government area of Nasarawa State. However, Governor Tanko Almakura says no, it's not true. Rather, what they have in Nasarawa State is 2 IDP camps of persons who have been forcefully migrated from Benue State and are now settling in Nasarawa State. However, the Benue State Police Command spokesman said the 2 policemen that were killed in Logo local government area of the state. But be that as it may, the governor of Benue State has met with the president, and he has asserted that the president has reacted positively to his request. Apart from the Inspector General of Police, who had already relocated to Makurdi today. In fact, they are scheduled to have a meeting with all that have a stake in the crisis in Benue this morning. Also, officers of the DSS and the army have also been deployed. Meanwhile, the 3-day mourning that was declared by the Benue state government, it will be ending tomorrow. There's supposed to be a mass burial, and tomorrow will mark the end of it, which is a work-free day. Meanwhile, there are allegations that the army had arrested militants who had migrated from Benue to attack communities in Taraba, and that is what Governor Autumn was denying. Meanwhile, across in Rivers State, Governor Nyesom Wike has also commended the federal government for decisive action that has been taken on the marauding cultists and kidnappers, particularly those who were involved in the New Year Passover killings. He commended the president for not acceding to the politicization of federally directed security agencies, according to Governor Nyesom Wike. He said in the state broadcast, he has giving a list of 32 persons he described as cultists, armed robbers, and kidnappers who are wanted. He has placed a ransom of 20 million on each of them. He said they refuse to renege on continuing their criminality, armed robbery, and cultism, and they refuse to accept the amnesty condition that were given.
That story, it's on the front page of Daily Independent. Just below the picture story, that's where you see that the story coming out from Rivers State, and it's like Wiki declares 32 alleged cultists wanted. And there's also a story just by just a little below the nameplate. Police arrest herdsmen with AK-47 pump action rifles in Ogun State. But let's take a look at another major news that broke late yesterday, and that's the political story now. INEC releasing timetable for 2019 general elections. You can find that just a little below the bottom plate of Daily Independent, and there is a rider to that. Insist on January 13th date for Anambra Central Senatorial rerun. Kingsley.
That's right. That's the story on politics. It's also there on the front pages of the three papers I have. Just directly below the name flag of this day newspaper, the headline is that INEC releases full election timetable, and parties have till December 3rd to produce presidential candidates. That story is in greater detail on page 12. That headline, of course, it's, as I was saying, is directly below the nameplate of this day newspaper. Now, the story is also there on the front page of Blueprint. Blueprint is there, but rather, let me just return to this day again. That's because the story is related to it. Just right at the foot of the front page of this day, it says 2019 Northern PDP leaders begin search for presidential candidate. That's on page 13 in greater detail. And back to Blueprint newspaper, the story is also there below the nameplate of Blueprint. Says 2019 PDP North begins search for presidential candidate, and then just there you have several other headlines. 2019 INEC okays February 16 for general election. That's the commencement of the general election. That story is on page 14. Now, for New Telegraph is the lead story. New Telegraph headline says, campaign starts on August 17th. And says with 4 riders, INEC releases 2019 general elections timetable, and PDP begins profiling of presidential aspirants. Kwankwanso mobilizes supporters. Uzodima, we must save democracy. That is on pages 5 and 12. And Bayo, just before you comment,
yes.
The New Telegraph is said campaign starts on August 17th, and yet if you were to take a look at the sidebar, that you have a box, what we call popularly a box. It's a sidebar actually. On the first column there, showing the 2019 election timeline. The campaigns actually are intended to kick off November 18th for the presidential, and then the others December the 1st.
We also have a report of October.
Well, not in the papers.
Not in the papers, yes. So
no, the date for the October 7th is between now and October 7th for the parties to produce their presidential candidates. Okay. But if it is the campaign start of campaign, as far as that is concerned, I think the date has been fixed for November 18th to February 14th, and that is for the presidential, and for the governors and other elections is December 1st to February 28th. But my worry about that is that it's good INEC is working far ahead of time. The implication for that for governance is that campaigning will take over governance, and governance will suffer for politicking. That is the worry I have.
All right, that point is noted. But since last year, we've been hearing and seeing the various subtle and not so subtle moves with regard to this. But one key point, perhaps, that you may wish to discuss is why stagger the takeoff of formal campaigning? Because you have all kinds of pseudo campaigns before the formal kickoff. Now, why segregate that of presidential and national assembly from those of the state houses of assembly and governorship? Because I mean, who's going to bear the cost? A presidential candidate normally would campaign around
the country.
Around the country.
Yes, the constituency.
Yes, right, because the entire country is his constituency. And in the course of such campaigns, you also have governorship candidates who are presented, as part of it. Now, is the presidential candidate and other party bigwigs going to return again, to the state after they have done their presidential campaign to come and join in presenting the candidates for the governorship and state house of assembly? It's costly.
The campaigns are should not be mutually exclusive.
Absolutely.
So it's worrying. But again, by the time we work at this is the first attempt by Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. We will learn from the mistakes that will come from it and then grow from there. But talking about deadlines,
not like card reader mistakes.
talking about deadlines. The Joint Admission and Matriculation Board has categorically said February 6th is fixed as a deadline for registration to sit for the UTME.
We have to. Sorry, I don't have my yellow
card.
Yellow card.
Yes.
Yeah, well, not yet the yellow card. It's just an indication. But there are other interesting stories that we've not had the opportunity of taking a look at. Just very quickly, Bayo just talked about JAM now.
Yes.
That story is also there on the front page of Blueprint newspaper. It says 2018 UTME holds March 9th. Yeah, that's just less than 2 months away because today is the 10th of January. And then below that you have a story, NECO releases November-December SSCE results.
There's another one, Kingsley. Federal government queries 42 varsities for post-UTME extortion.
Oh, well, that's right. That's an issue that we have to worry about.
That is very important. Universities now are to refund to students. All those who charge more than 2,000 are to refund. And the essence of government is to make access to education a lot more cheaper. That's why tuition to the universities are free. But JAMB is charging registration fee to the extent that it made a profit, what I want to describe as a profit of 7.8. More than 200% of what it cost it to run it.
And the pass mark was lowered.
Yes, they can afford to charge half of what they are charging now to enable more poor students to participate in the exams.
All right, Bayo, still a story before we go to the editorial of Blueprint.
Yes, editorial.
From Kaduna. New Telegraph, Kaduna is saying teacher strike. AUT task force locks Kaduna schools, chases students away, and government opens attendance register. School messenger slumps after receiving sack letter.
And
that's on page 6.
It says we won't pay Kaduna striking teacher, says RFI on page, the bottom page.
All right, Bayo, let's take the editorial. The editorial is for Blueprint newspaper, and that's on page 11. And it's on relief for gunshot victims. Of course, it's talking about the signing into law, the bill now known as the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017. The editorial goes on to commend what the government has done, but also indicates that, as it says here in the last paragraph, that the paper says it's curious that the law is silent on accident victims that also suffer the same fate, and that given the deplorable condition of our roads, it's quite obvious that more accident fatalities are recorded on a daily basis than gunshot victims.
Yes, it's true. If the intention is to save life, it should not be only to gunshot victims alone. Accident victims, you have it. And particularly, I think the doctor will be free now to feel comfortable to treat people with gunshot wound. However, there's another critical element, that of insisting on payment before treating persons must be addressed. If not, the essence of saving life
I thought the Minister of Health was here, just before we round off this, was here, on this program, and I think I did put this issue to him. Yes. He made clarification, to this effect of payment, and then he also talked about the fact that, this is standing alone. Why is it not an addendum to the National Health Act? But Bayo, we've really run out of time, so that we don't get penalized by the producer. Let's
Bayo, we are but it's a human interest story. People will learn from this. They can go to the front to the details on page 31 of New Telegraph. The governor of Oyo State saying that he washed dead bodies to survive abroad. All right, Bayo, thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow when we're back for a review of the newspapers.
Thank you very much.
See you, Bayo.
Okay, all right. It's still Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the issue of evacuating illegal or irregular Nigerian migrants trapped in Libya.
It's that time of the year when we appreciate all those that mean so much to us. Our sponsors, our clients, government at all levels, corporate bodies, advertisers, religious bodies, civil society groups, political parties, businesses, and above all, you, our esteemed viewers. Together, we made 2017 great. Together, we shall make 2018 even greater. That's why we say thank you. Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
The time has come for Nigeria to take her rightful place in world sports with the first national grassroots sports festival to discover and prepare sport talent and develop future world champions for Nigeria. The festival date is 3rd to 10th March 2018. Venue is the National Stadium, Abuja, packages A and B. This is the opportunity for you to promote your brand through the festival. For broadcast sponsorship, which include live broadcasts, highlight shows, and TV fans show, contact the Chairman, Chief Coordinator, Angelo Peter I. Elosia, or Nick Onishi. Organizers, Grassroots International Sports Academy and LOP Worldwide Television. Endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Broadcast partner, NTA.
Another edition of TV Guide magazine is out with revealing accounts of trending stories. With the dwindling oil revenue, he says there is no reason to worry.
We strongly believe that culture is Nigerians' new oil, and we're going to show that by creating wealth, our art and culture will be a statement for all of us.
Our cover story is on Otumba Olusegun Munchiwe, Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture. For upcoming TV presenters, Elegant Elizabeth Banu tells you what it takes. A peep into the activities of the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, a mandate being fulfilled. A trip to the Yankari Games Reserve and Safari in Bauchi State brings you closer to nature. And the Oshun Oshogo Festival, our culture, our pride. Professor Adiku, the Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, tells us what it means to manage a university, plus our regular features, star profile, media issues, relationships, young minds, entertainment, sports, and lots more. Pick your copy now at the vendors or at every NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, still your indispensable companion.
Now, welcome back to the program. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and right on time as we commence our discussion. I'm sure you've heard it. It's all over the news, it's all over the social media, it's all over your television set. That's the Nigerian delegation mission to Libya. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we'll be discussing the evacuation of Nigerian irregular migrants from Libya, or as well as the mandate of the delegation to Libya. But let's take this report by Garba Mohammed Natala, who also was, of course, a member of the Nigerian delegation to the North African country.
Facts-finding mission on the level of enslavement of Nigerians in Libya is in compliance with the directives of President Muhammadu Buhari to carry out massive evacuation of Nigerians stranded in the North African country. While at the Libyan capital Tripoli, the Nigerian delegation visited 5 detention camps in Jentun and Janzo after getting the nod of the country's president and meetings with ministries of foreign affairs, interior and justice to lay down a framework for the safe return of the trapped Nigerian migrants. Despite returning to the country and the commencement of the evacuation, members of the delegation have continued to hold high-level meetings on measures to assist the returnees to put behind their ordeals, be self-sustaining, and never think of attempting to go to Europe illegally.
We have an estimated number. We have about 50 camps to carry out these operations.
First of all, we're admitting them, and rehabilitating them, reintegrating them back into the society.
I want Nigerians to know that those who are returning are not all trafficked and they are not all smuggled.
Some of the migrants say they have learned the hard way.
The beating and all from the desert and the mistreatment from the Libyan police and all.
Now I've learned my lesson. I will not even encourage any or even my enemy to begin the journey.
I give glory to God Almighty, who are able to help us out of this prison.
More outcomes will emerge as the federal government remains committed to stem the tide of illegal migration of her youth.
All right, Natala, thank you very much there for that background report. We have with us here in the studios, guests to elaborate further on the outcome of the mission to Libya. First, at this time, we'd like to welcome the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama. Honorable Minister, pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay. And then we also have with us here in the studios the Director General of NAPTIP. NAPTIP, of course, is the Agency for the Prohibition Against Trafficking in Persons. Julie Oka-Donley. Mrs. Oka-Donley, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, but let's begin the conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Tell us, if you like, what your experience was like on this apparently traumatic visit to Libya to see Nigerians who've been enslaved, thousands of them, we understand.
It was really, I would say, bittersweet. In a way, because bitter to see such young children in such terrible condition, you know, and also, of course, the narrative of what was happening to them, you know, the physical abuse, the sexual exploitation, and so on and so on. The sweet part was, as I told them, I probably have never felt so proud to be a Nigerian, because you saw these children in such difficult conditions who had really gone through the worst kinds of trauma you can imagine. And yet, when we arrived at the biggest center, there were about 350 of them. They were all seated outside. They all rose in unison as we arrived and stood and sang the national anthem with such passion and such pride, you know. It brought tears to our eyes. And, you know, and also the national pledge. And then the way they comported themselves, the dignity, the respect, you know, in such difficult circumstances. So that was really very moving, but also a source of pride in that sense. Then, of course, the negotiations with the government was tricky. You know, we had to be very deft in our negotiations, because of course they were still you know, in a vulnerable position, and we were mindful of that. So it required a lot of, you know, diplomacy and but at the same time firmness. We had to make it clear to them that we cannot accept our citizens being treated in any ways that were short of what was required under international conventions.
All right, let's also get your experience. We know that he talked about, you know, the children who were involved in this whole racketeering and women and all that. What experience, what was your own experience?
The Honorable Minister said it all, but what, as a woman, I noticed that there were some pregnant women there, and there were some women who just had babies while in detention. Something else again that struck us was the fact that the women were being guarded by male guards as against female guards, which is against the protocol, you know, and not allowed anywhere in the world. But that was what we saw. So there was no privacy, you know, amongst them, and those were some of the things I noticed.
All right, just before we get back again into the details of the experience of the Nigerian irregular migrants, Honorable Minister, we discussed the issue on this program last year, you know, as all kinds of horrific images were being posted on the social media. And one of the points that emerged had to do with perhaps the challenge of dealing with the Libyan government, because there are said to be several centers of power. How did you navigate this?
Well, you know, of course, we had to deal with the government that we met. You know, we met with the President, we met with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, we met with the Minister of Justice. So, you know, obviously we were cognizant of the fact, and they made it clear that there were areas where they did not have full control. In fact, one of the camps we had to visit, the security that was put in place, you know, with snipers and everything to, you know, protect us as we went, was quite significant. But the point we made to them essentially was that those that are under your control, we expect that they should be well treated, you know. And then there's a narrative that, of course, there were interests that did not want those to be repatriated because they're economic assets. They're using them, you know, for labor, for sexual exploitation and other things. So there are people who are profiting from them. So we also had to be mindful to ensure that all the Nigerians were taken out. And we had an experience where the first camp we went to, they told us there were 375 Nigerians in the camp. When we got out and met these Nigerian children and everything, they were telling us, and the girls were a lot more courageous, I must say, you know, than maybe the boys. They're telling us there are other Nigerians being hidden around. And we said, where? And they sort of, you know, told us where they were. And we told these people we wanted to go in and see for ourselves. And lo and behold, about another 300 Nigerian children came out, you know.
But Honourable Minister, even before we go deeper, I'd just like for you to share with us what's this mandate, you know, for the presidential mandate, you know, given to your delegation. Beyond getting these Nigerians back, what other thing were you supposed to do, and what did you find out?
You know, well, this is a different, multifaceted issue, the issue of these illegal migrants. You know, prevention, border measures. You know, the Libyans were very keen to point out that there was also a responsibility on our side, you know, to prevent our young children going. And I think they're right, you know, also, that the whole burden cannot just be on them. And so the nature of the delegation, you know, the DG of NAPTIP was there, the DG, you know, refugees, and the Controller General, immigration, and so forth. So Mr. President clearly has a vision that this has to be addressed in a comprehensive and holistic manner. So we were very mindful of that, you know, that the issue of rehabilitation, reintegration when they come back, the issue of advocacy, using them, sensitizing our people about the dangers, and I think they can play an important role, you know, in this, and of course, you know, the economic aspects of things in our country. So, you know, we're mindful of all that, but I think the first thing was really just to get them out.
Okay.
All right, just getting them out, that's fine. But let's, for the benefit of Nigerians who are home, let's have an idea from the DG of NAPTIP. How did the whole idea of encampment evolve? I mean, we keep hearing of camps. What's in sense do we get of you know, why the camps exist, probably who runs them, and how? What is a camp? Is it an orientation camp, a deportation camp, an evacuation camp, or what?
The camps in Libya, if I understand you right,
that's what I'm asking.
Are detention camps. In Libya, if you're irregular, you're considered a criminal. That's the law in Libya. And so when the irregular migrants are arrested, they put them in various camps. They're like detention, like prisons, but not prison, but detention camps that are more or less like prisons as well. Because their rights are restricted, they are locked up in various, you know, cells within the camp and heavily guarded by security men.
Again, for purposes of clarification, who runs the detention camps? Because there are various allegations of abuse and they use forced labor and so on and so forth. Who runs? Who is in charge of the detention?
The camps we saw, the camps we were allowed to go into are run by the Libyan government, and I think it's under the Ministry of Interior, Minister of Interior. So yeah. So those are run by, there are some camps that are run by various militia groups, but these particular camps that were in control, under the control of the Libyan government, were being run by the Libyan government.
All right, back again to the Honourable Minister. Just before, the Honourable Minister, you were talking about the extent of the scope of the mandate of the mission to Libya. Is there a sense of accomplishment on this, shall we say, first visit?
Yes, I think so, because as I said, the nature of the delegation, which is sort of comprehensive in its coverage, I think there is that sense of accomplishment, because I think we have a clearer vision now of what we need to do in tackling this. I think maybe in the past there might have been an element of just bringing them back, you know. But we're also extremely mindful of the criminal aspect of this. And while we were there, we met a trafficker who was being tried in Libya, a lady, a Nigerian lady, you know. So and here NAPTIP, you know, obviously plays an important role, and the you know, immigration, the border measures that we have to put in place, a stronger borders. So so that sense of accomplishment, I think, obviously, it's a work in progress. We're not there yet, but it's important to put in place really the building blocks and to have a much more a clearer vision of what we want to achieve. And as I said, you know, the criminal aspects, prosecution, you know, the border measures, you know, secure border measures, and the sensitization program.
All right, let's welcome the Senior Special Assistant to the President in Diaspora Matters, who's just joined us, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, also a member of the delegation, presidential delegation to Libya. Thank you very much, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, for joining us. And,
Thank you.
We'd just like for you to quickly share your own experience in Libya, considering the fact that there are also women and children, minors, involved in this whole saga.
Well, thank you very much and good morning. Well, it was very surreal, it was very touching, and in particular, like you said, seeing 10, 11, 14-year-old girls in prison with other women. And the most important thing, as I think the minister said, is one is we're able to bring them back, but secondly is rehabilitation, recovery, and what happens thereafter. So it's, I mean, it's in all my years of journalism and 12 years in Parliament, 50 years in journalism, I've never, ever seen anything like that. Despite having been to prisons, to visit Nigerians there and all that, I've never, ever seen something of that magnitude. And nobody deserves to go through the kind of torture that they all have gone through. And you know, for everybody that has been in that detention center, they've gone through torture. When they come back, they shouldn't go through, I mean, there should be succor and all that, which the federal government, under the leadership of the minister and this delegation, is ensuring that all that happens. So it's, it was a very emotional moment and quite touching for every one of us on that delegation. We understand that
Libya is really not the destination of most Nigerians who are in Libya, but of course Europe. Those of them involved or caught up in this whole web are there because, you know, the borders, you know, because of the total blockade to the routes to Italy and all that. What did you find out about the conditions of other Nigerians who are living in Libya?
Actually, we can break them down. There are Nigerians living legally in Libya, and we met them, led by the Honorable Minister. I mean, there's a Nigerian who owns a school. We have a Nigerian school. There are Nigerians doing great businesses. They're living legally in Libya, and that made us really happy. And they also say they'll do all they can to support other Nigerians, you know, that are having problems there. But also there are some whose destination is actually Libya. Speaking to some of them, we realize that according to the demography, most from the southwest, their destination is Libya. They don't want to cross over to Italy. They want to stay in Libya, but they're staying there illegally. So what are the challenges? How can the irregular migration be made regular? Those are some of the things that should be looked about. But some others, of course, are trying to cross to Europe. And you know what the traffickers do? They show them pictures. They show them beautiful scenery. Look, this is Libya here. This is the water. Look at Italy just there. And then they show them pictures of this is what you can own. You can build a house. Look at what A has done. But it's all a facade and a mirage. It's not true. You know, and when we keep saying, well, it's poverty, we know it's there's poverty involved. You know, government must create an enabling environment to make jobs available and all that. But most importantly is ignorance. Everyone that has returned, whether since January or since 2 days ago, will tell you that if they had known, they would never, ever, ever have gone on that trip. And all they wanted was just to come back home. So ignorance plays a role. If they have an idea, I'm telling you, nobody will go through that kind of torture. And you know what? Dr. Jibuna, who at one time went on an adventure through the Sahara, he's done it 4 times, will share his experiences. When he met 100 of them and spoke to them and said, you know what? Maybe out of 100, 10 will survive. They were clapping and praying that maybe it will be those 10. that will survive. So there's hope. But now, out of 100, none is likely to survive. That is the reality of the situation. And even when you do, what happens to you? So I'm hoping that all those who are back will tell their stories to others and let them know that it is just not worth it. And for parents who are encouraging their children, selling their property for their children to go and bring money home, you're killing your children and destroying our future. And looking at those boys and girls, they have the future of Nigeria. Some are very brilliant, and we had conversations with them. So really, awareness plays a major role in this matter. Government must create an enabling environment. We agree with that. Government must carry out its responsibility. But each one of us, we all have a role to play. And I keep saying, let each one teach one. Let one person tell the other person that this is not right. For instance, just 3 weeks ago, my driver was trying to buy some things in Lagos, and the woman was telling him about how she wants her daughter to go to Italy. And he was telling her that, haven't you seen all these pictures and what is happening? She had no idea. And I think my driver talking to that woman, he was able to save a woman from sending her daughter to peril and danger.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Abike Arowa. But let's bring in again the DJ of NAPTIP. Do we have an idea, perhaps, of a rough census of irregular migrants, Nigerian irregular migrants who are currently trapped in Libya?
Yeah, we are told there are over 5,000. And so far, almost 1,000 are back. So we're hoping to bring the rest. But we expect to see much more than that. It's just a rough estimate.
Okay, and then back again to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Onyama. Is there a sense in which, considering the figures that we have heard and what the DJ NAPTIP has just said now, 5,000 Nigerians who are irregular migrants, and of course several others, probably in their thousands, we do not know about, and considering the experiences that they have been through, did we respond late?
Well, when you respond, you want to be successful. There's no point. No, I wouldn't say we responded late. On the contrary, unlike a lot of countries, we actually have an embassy in Libya. Now, they had been moved at the height of the problems to Malta, but we very quickly, because of the situation that we have with Nigerian irregular migrants, moved them to Libya. So we've had a presence there, and they've been working very closely with the International Organization for Migration. So Nigerians have been, as we've seen on television, have been being repatriated, being brought back and evacuated. So we haven't acted late. What then happened was that our embassy there now informed us that the numbers had increased dramatically, and that it was probably more than the IOM could manage as far as evacuation was concerned, and that we needed a major intervention. And Mr. President gave the directives for that intervention.
Back again to the DG NAPTIP. Did we respond late? Or where were we, let's say the agencies responsible for all of this, when thousands of Nigerians were literally walking into their death in the Sahara?
I won't say we responded late, because IOM, as a matter of fact, has been evacuating returnees for the last 5 years. So it's been a continuous exercise. We've been having people come back in thousands almost every week in Lagos. So it's not something that just started with the directive. The only difference is that the federal government is now supporting IOM, and we are going to have more flights coming in and more people coming in. But I don't think
what happened to the preventive aspect of all of this? That's part of what NAPTIP was supposed to be doing. These are persons, who have been, of course, a number of them we understand have been trafficked. And then you have an agency responsible for the prohibition of trafficking in persons.
As a matter of fact, NAPTIP has been doing a lot with regards to awareness. We've engaged community leaders in almost all the communities, and it's ongoing. It's something that's been going on for years. A lot of awareness is being raised, and I believe it has really helped to reduce the number of irregular migrants traveling, to Europe and the rest of the world. We also have gone very far in trying to get the trafficking in persons as in curricula into the primary and secondary school curriculum. We're hoping that by September it will be approved by NEC, and once that is done, it will go a very long way. So NAPTIP has been working over the years, and we are still working, creating awareness.
All right, let's bring in Honorable Abike Dabiri Erewa now. A former Nigerian ambassador to Libya, in one of the books he wrote on this issue, I'm talking about Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim, said as far back as the early 2000, over 1,000, and this is a figure he quoted, over 1,500 Nigerians were in Libyan prisons, and that more than 40% of those on death row in Libya were Nigerians. So again, back to the question Kingsley asked, did we start late?
Well, let me start with my own experience. As far back as 2010 in Parliament, we intervened in this issue, and the House of Representatives was able to bring back 24 that Gaddafi, that would have been killed by the then President Gaddafi then. And we wrote a letter to the AU, to the President himself, and they came back to Nigeria, 24 of them. And we kept saying then that, you know what, it's dangerous. But then and then the current CG of Immigration, when it was the immigration officer in NAPTIP then, was also part of a delegation that brought back thousands to Nigeria. So it's been happening all the time. And I think what happened over the years was the fact that because of the lack of leadership in Libya, the crisis they're going through, it got a little bit more dangerous and tougher. So maybe Africa itself is acting late.
What about our mission in Libya? No, I was sure that our mission was kidnapping, because we have a mission in Libya who is supposed to be responsible for, the Nigerians who live in such countries.
No, but these are Nigerians crossing irregularly. These are Nigerians going through a dangerous route. These are Africans, and why we keep saying Nigerians, Africans who are trying to cross over to Europe. So I think looking at it holistically, whether we're acting late or not, African Union and the European Union must take this as a crisis situation and deal with it that way. So it goes beyond Nigeria as a country. We should be looking at the African continent and the European Union itself. It's a demand and supply situation. If there's no demand, there will be no supply. So why on our part, on the African continent, we should do everything we can, especially through NAPTIP, to stop trafficking and curtail demand, supply. They on their part should do everything to curtail demand. So I think moving on is not about any blame game now. What goes on from here? AU, EU must take this more seriously. Now, over the years, we've been talking about irregular migrants dying at sea, but nobody listened to us. Now that it's drawn world attention with wars and conflicts all over the world, which has made the issue of refugees and migrants now a problem to the world is paying attention to it. So I'm hoping that with this attention, we can seriously, as the continent, both the African continent and the European continent, be determined to put a stop to it. Now, they go through a route. They go through Agadez. Who is blocking that route? Where's the EU police to stop this issue of trafficking? So I think what we should be looking about is about time that we come together to ensure that we put a stop to the issue of human trafficking.
I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering, because the minister talked earlier about what the Nigerian mission had tried to do, first relocating to Malta and then coming back, and a point about why we seem not to have picked this up. A mission, of course, will also include a defense attaché, assuming there is one. And what is the role of the defense attaché if these are irregular migrants? But these are Nigerians who are all trapped there. But one point Honorable Abike was talking about earlier, I said, look, demand and supply. These are the push and the pull factors. Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim was our guest on this program when we discussed the issue at the height of the revelation of the torture that Nigerians were going through in Libya. But I'm wondering, Honorable Abike, what do we know about the push factors? In other words, if we are to stem the tide from our own side, as the Libyan authorities have also quite reasonably requested, what do we know about the push factors? Considering also that we have now many media platforms, if ignorance is that, why are people not benefiting from the plenitude of media platforms for enlightenment?
Well, I think in terms of media engagement, all the agencies involved need to do a lot more, including you.
And that's what we are doing now.
We've been doing this. We've been on top of this.
If you recall, I mean, just to interject before you continue your flow, we actually had a guest, but you actually helped us source that guest. He was a returnee. We took him from our Lagos Network Center, and he we had also another one from Benin who were telling us, what their experiences were, and also ultimately speaking to the audience about the hazards out there. But still, I mean, we have thousands of Nigerians who are going through this.
Not even just in Libya, we have other parts of African countries that we've not talked about.
Yes, all right.
Absolutely. There should be a lot more that should be done in terms of enlightenment. But I'll tell you something. There are those that no matter what you tell them, they believe their destiny. Somebody has told them that their destiny is in Europe. So there are some with the mindset, there's nothing you tell them. They just must get to that Europe because they believe, that's where they're going to make it. So there's nothing you can do about those people. But there are many people that are ignorant. For instance, there should be more billboards, jingles on every station, every channel. And we're appealing to everyone. It's not just about it. It's not just a government thing. It should be something we should all show an interest in. If you have any blood flowing through your veins. So we also expect that media outlets, can support with their own jingles, programs, and I think about 3 or 4 are talking about doing programs on this. NTA, for instance, there should be one that I don't know whether it has started, that was done with one of our Nollywood stars. That should be a series on the issue of irregular migration. So yes, we need a lot more. And then most importantly, going into the cities and villages and, talking one-on-one with mothers in particular, going to the marketplaces, working with traditional institutions. I remember that some time ago we were in Benin. Apart from seeing the governor, we saw the Oba of Benin, the late Oba of Benin. And you know what, by the time we discussed the issue of irregular migration, the Oba came on national television and said, I place the curse on any family that encourages their children to be trafficked. And I'm telling you, it went down in Benin. If that was sustained, maybe we would have achieved more results. So traditional institutions, religious institutions, we all must be involved in this awareness campaign.
Right. Honorable Abika, you said the late Oba of Benin, just is the pastor Oba of Benin.
Sorry, let's go back. Yes, this is a very serious matter, really. Honorable Minister, earlier on you were telling us about the difficulty, to get to other centers or other camps, that are not under the control of the UN-recognized Libyan government. Now, is there no way you can also interface with the leader of that government?
Absolutely, we're doing that. We're doing that. We have channels of outreach to the militia and other groups, and together with the IOM. So it's an ongoing process in engaging with them. But maybe also coming back to what you were talking about earlier about the push and pull factor. There's another aspect that is a reality, and in fact about 3 days ago I was reading, I think it was BBC that carried it. There was a Burkinabe who had also been trafficked, had been imprisoned in Libya, and was now a huge success in Italy in the fashion industry. So so some of these migrants know people who have made it. They probably, in their communities, also see, people that they've known who have made, transited there to those countries and have built houses back home and that kind of thing, But I think the point that was made earlier was that the chances getting less and less, all the time, of them being able to make it across. And I think that's really what we have to, also communicate in the narrative that we're putting out there.
I'm wondering what the scope of your work plan is, because based on the comments that the other guests have made and then matters arising from your mission to Libya, how is your mission planning, for instance, to engage with the Governors Forum to brief them on what you had seen and what the shared responsibility would be? Because Agadez is right there in the Niger Republic, but we understand that part of the halfway houses where the migrants are affected, you find them in Katsina, you also find them in Kano, and yet there are governments in those places.
Absolutely, and I think you're right. It really is, and I think that's the vision of Mr. President, that it's going to be, we're all stakeholders in this, and at every level. And yes, as we prepare the report that will be presented to Mr. President, recommendations will be made as to how we tackle this issue. But it's absolutely essential to get our border measures right. I think that is really almost a starting point, I would say.
All right, let's bring in the DG NAPTIP. Again, borrowing from MK Ibrahim's, right up. He quoted someone as saying that, look, majority of the Nigerians who, ply these Mediterranean routes are seeking for greener pastures. That we are actually, African nations are actually pushing, in quotes, their people, out of the country. And earlier on, Honorable KIDNAPPING talked about, hey, this is not just poverty. There's much more to it. So in reintegration and, rehabilitating these people, what are we doing? What is the form that is going to take?
Yeah, before I go to rehabilitation, I really want to point out that truly 90% of the cases we've seen are just purely that of ignorance. And talking about awareness, don't forget that most of those irregular migrants come from communities, and we're talking of awareness. We've been doing a lot on TV, billboards, radio, but do they have access? That's what we should be asking ourselves. Most of them don't even have access to the internet. Most of them don't have access to power, so it's difficult, except we take it to them there, which is what we've been doing. So we go to the communities and take, videos to them and show them these graphics. So it's not about TV, radio, it's about getting to them, engaging them, the community leaders, the faith-based organizations, and all of that.
Responsibility is that?
NAPTIP has been doing that, and we're still doing that. Now, coming to rehabilitation, we have shelters attached to all our offices. And what we do is, when these returnees return, we take them, or when we even get some of them on our own, when they are intercepted and all of that. We keep them in the NAPTIP shelters. We counsel them, take care of their medicals, and rehabilitate them while they are in the shelters. Because it is a very big mistake to bring them back and let them go after 2 days. That is a very big mistake. But at NAPTIP, we keep them in the shelters, and within 6 months, they are rehabilitated. Whatever skills they want to acquire, we give to them. Some of them have gone to schools, universities. We have some who graduated recently with 2-1. They did very well. We have some who are about to go into the secondary schools, because not all of them want to go back to schools. So some of them, acquire skills, and afterwards we ensure that we follow them up for the next 2 years to ensure that they are not re-trafficked after a while.
All right, thank you very much, DG NAPTIP. But you just talked about perhaps the challenges that you've had, or the challenges that were always there with regard to communication, trying to drill down the message to the communities where some of these trafficked persons come from. I'm wondering, this question is an open one. Oftentimes we complain about our universities and the fact that probably some of them don't get to do research and studies that are relevant to our needs. This is a major social problem. How many sociologists or social scientists have been involved in this? How many communication scholars have been brought in to deal with aspects relating essentially to behavior change communication? Who takes this? Honorable Minister or Honorable Abike, who is also a journalist?
Let's get Honorable Abike Dabiri.
Well, I think it's something that should be done, and I believe it's part of the things NAPTIP will be working on, because it's basically their responsibility. So yes, it's a good suggestion, and I think that should be taken up by NAPTIP.
Kingsley, I wanted to follow up on the question I asked the NAPTIP, DG on the program, your rehabilitation and reintegration, because most times we hear, okay, we get them, we rehabilitate them, we reintegrate them. We've been hearing of this process, even with the internally displaced persons, and we still have a lot more to do. With regards to the returnees, we understand yesterday, just those of them who returned in Benin protested, asking for transport fares. So what is it that you have for these people in terms of package, in terms of a program?
For us at NAPTIP, like I said before, we engage the returnees. Whatever they want, is what we give to them. We don't dictate to them what
Are
they
you aware
want.
of the protest yesterday in Benin?
Well, I don't want to involve myself with what happened in Benin, because the Edo State governor has his own arrangement. He takes the indigenes of Edo away to Edo State. But those of them we have concerns with, who we think we can get the traffickers, you know, that have something to do with them, we take away. Because our job is not just to bring people back and let them go. The job of NAPTIP is to ensure that the traffickers are prosecuted as well, because that is justice, total justice for the returnees. As at yesterday, we arrested 2 traffickers and they are being investigated right now. So those that are taken by NAPTIP, I can speak authoritatively on those ones. They are very well rehabilitated. We do not release them into the society until they have been rehabilitated, because it's a very dangerous thing to let them go before the rehabilitation.
So you take them into
our shelters, yes, counsel them,
okay,
treat them, because most of them come back with different conditions. So it's also very risky bringing them back and releasing them after 2 days back into the society. That is another epidemic that is waiting to blast in our faces very soon.
All kinds of
yes.
potential
for how long? For how long do you hold them?
Yes. You know, health hazards.
Between 6 months and 2 years. We do not release them because the health hazards, we are going to be talking about this very soon. There's going to be a major epidemic. So it's a very wrong thing for those states who are taking them and releasing them after 2 days. If you're not ready, just get your shelters first. Keep them with you for at least 6 months to 1 year. Treat them, counsel them, but do not release them.
Is the Federal Ministry of Health or the state ministries of health also involved in this? Because, as you said, and it should be obvious that persons who have been kept in such inhuman conditions will come back with all kinds of conditions that could then affect the general population if you don't have a quarantine system for them. But back, there's one issue that has been raised about rehabilitation, reintegration, and all that. Honorable Abika, you've been involved in diaspora matters, and one of the issues, of course, we've also heard about over the years, so-called skill acquisition centers, you know, that have been set up by state governments to provide persons with skills. Is it that those skill acquisition centers have not met their purposes to the extent that, look, we're still having this push of thousands of young Nigerians out? What can be done to tweak such skill acquisition programs so that they get a good fit into the ongoing rehabilitation agenda?
Well, I guess it varies from states to states. I can speak for legal skills acquisition centers, and you know, after they are trained, they get engaged. But even for this process, process of bringing them back, SDG's office, under the office of SDG, has a program for the returnees. There's a leaflet where, if they're interested, there are numbers to call. They'll contact the numbers, and then SDGs is willing to put them through some skills acquisition if they are interested. So I think that should be a question for states to answer, how they do their skills acquisition. But I know that the one for Lagos actually trains them, sets them up, and there are stories of those who have actually been back. And then again, from those that have been back since January, for instance, you know, sometimes I'm at the airport to receive them. And since we started January last year, and we follow up with some of them. Like, I know about 5 that were trained in Benin. One even sent me her pictures not too long ago. She's now making cakes, and she's been trained on event planning in Benin. Her name is Gift, and she even got a job in, I think, Ogun State to bake cakes. And she's thinking of maybe getting an apartment or something. She's looking for a good place to stay. And so the story is very, I think most importantly is that one is to follow up with these returnees and know what they're doing. Mr. Planner, for instance, is about getting out his CD, and he's being helped again by, I think, Edo State also. So really it varies from state to state. But it's also important that governors take charge of their citizens. So whatever it takes, for instance, I'm told there are 26 from Lagos State. I expect Lagos State government to take responsibility for their citizens, take them through skills acquisition, rehabilitation, and recovery. You can't leave all to the federal government. They come from states. And I think that has been encouraged by the federal government to ensure that state governors take responsibilities for their citizens.
What can you say if state governors, you know, do take responsibility of their, you know, citizens? And we have, for instance, what has happened in Benin yesterday. That's not a good development, is it?
Yeah, we're talking of thousands. You know, so it's something that the committee under the minister should engage the governors on. they are your citizens and you have to take responsibility for them. You know, some states come and take their citizens, like yesterday we're told Edo, Delta, Imo, Enugu. So they should be working with agencies responsible to ensure they go through the process of recovery and rehabilitation and all that. So states need to now get more involved in what is going on. Virtually every state in the country. You can't leave everything to the... We're talking about thousands, and they came from various states. You know, so that is an area that should be exploited effectively and judiciously.
Yeah, wait, there's the issue again of deterrence. DG NAPTIP was talking about the latest arrest of 2 alleged traffickers. But I'm sure, I don't have any study report on this, but if you were to ask Nigerians just using the grab sample, you are likely to find any warm reception to the view that traffickers have been apprehended or have been prosecuted and then facing appropriate jail sentences. Or even if they are, nobody can put a name to the faces or a face to the names.
You know, previously we never advertised, you know, or named, you know, traffickers. But now we've decided to name and shame, you know, because a lot of people do not even realize that NAPTIP has gotten about 336 convictions, and, you know, we prosecute, you know, lots of traffickers. So now going forward, we are going to be naming them and shaming them. So maybe Nigerians will now realize that this is real and NAPTIP has been prosecuting traffickers.
Okay, now back to the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. There was an opinion expressed sometime as to the capacity, the current capacity of the Nigerian mission to deal with this issue, and therefore a suggestion that other than Tripoli, where we have our mission, there ought to be a consulate. There's the name of some stopover point that was mentioned on the route from Agadez towards Tripoli. I'm not sure, I think it's a name that starts with an S.
You have Sabra, you have...
is this a matter that you need to consider? Yes, in terms first of the size of the diplomatic staff in Tripoli, and then as well as contemplated the establishment of a consulate elsewhere in Libya.
Yes, you know, of course, but as you know, as you yourself acknowledged, you know, Libya is going through, you know, a very serious situation. We've only just moved our mission back to Libya, you know, so these are things we will, you know, look at, and I think these are some of the good points that could come out of this mission, you know, to have a comprehensive review and assessment of how we address this this whole issue, you know, going forward. You know, the reality, coming back to your push and pull factor also, is that, you know, we as a government have to also build up the economy, you know, because if you don't have enough jobs, you know, we have a youth bulge. 70% of our population, you know, below the age of 35, and we have to have an economy that provides jobs for these young people. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be a push factor, you know. So of course, Mr. President is working extremely hard, you know, and in our economic recovery and growth plan, putting in the building blocks. Unfortunately, it's not something that can be done overnight, but I think that's a reality. You know, if you don't have jobs, young people are just going to be leaving the country, and there's free movement. You know, you can't stop, you know, adults leaving the country.
All right, the International Organization, you know, for Migration, IOM, has also been in evacuating returnees in African irregular migrants, and you know, under its VHR program, that's a voluntary humanitarian return program. So is the organization assisting Nigeria, or are we solo on this?
No, we're working very much in concert with them, and you know, the delegation met with them also in Libya to coordinate this, and also with the European Union. You know, very recently in Abidjan, Mr. President was there. We had the EU Africa AU summit, you know, and of course one of the major items and one of the biggest priorities for European countries is this issue of irregular migration. Mr. President met with Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, and the sole item on the agenda was the issue of Nigerian irregular migrants. And so, you know, some people tell us, they say that, look, listen, Turkey was given billions and billions of dollars to stop Syrian migrants coming into Europe. Why doesn't Africa also make those kinds of demands on the European Union for those huge resources? And so we're also in discussions with the EU, especially, you know, vocational training and investments, which the EU says that they're now developing a program to invest in African countries, involving their private sector, you know, to keep the young Africans, you know, in those countries with, you know, with jobs and skills, you know. So, so we are looking and exploring all the options.
What ECOWAS and AU, with regards to the outcome of, you know, the AU-EU summit in Abidjan, is there an update on measures that have been put in place? No, because one of the issues they decided on is to address the root cause of the regular migration.
Yes, you know, and also the repeat, you know, migrants. So clearly, I think everybody appreciates that you have to have jobs in these countries, you know, and these migrants have to have skills. Otherwise, you know, they're not going to want to stay in those countries if they don't have the skills, you know, to get jobs. So the EU's approach is skills development and investing. I think they realize now that they themselves will now have to, and they're encouraging their private sector to invest in African countries to help the youth develop skills, and so they will have you know, those skills in their countries. You know, last year we had a meeting with the European Union, and I met with Federica Mogherini, who's the EU High Representative. And, you know, I was telling her, for instance, I said, look, because they were telling us about a program for you know, skills to Nigerians being recruited to Europe to work in certain countries. And I said, well, okay, you know, we have a technical aid corps program in Nigeria where we recruit Nigerians. You know, why don't you save that money and use it for us to recruit even more people in Nigeria and to stay here and to, you know, and to work in these countries, rather than them going over to Europe and working there, and then probably afterwards wanting to stay there, and then you have the brain drain as well. So we are looking at all kinds of options, partnering with the Europeans to get our citizens to stay here, but also to have the jobs and to have the skills.
All right, Honourable Minister, thank you very much. In addition to the points you just articulated, in order to decelerate the push factor for irregular migration with regard to job creation, which is the responsibility of all the national and subnational governments, some commentators have also talked about macroeconomic stability, in particular exchange rate management. Because I mean, some of the comments that they say, look, if the euro is exchanging for not less than 400 naira or 420, you earn €1, you earn much more than the Nigerian who is employed here back home. The same thing with the dollar and so on and so forth. But let's bring in the DG NAPTIP. What do we know about the timetable for the evacuation of the Nigerians who are still there? Some 5,000 of them you have identified, 1,000 back home now we know. 4,000, what was the timeline for getting them all back if they are willing?
In the first instance, 3 weeks, that's 21 days, but it's an ongoing process. After 21 days, if there are more to be evacuated, they will continue to evacuate them, and, you know, as we go along.
Well, how long is this? There's a contract for one airline, Max Airline. Is that sufficient? Max Air, is that sufficient? I mean, an aircraft, even if it's a 787, it can only take so many persons.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Medview Airline as well as Max Airline were both contracted for this purpose.
Honourable Minister, you want to speak to this?
Well, you know, the figures we have at the moment are 5,500. Now, this was very problematic because the Libyan government was telling us that they have just a little over 1,000 Nigerians there. So there's a clear discrepancy, you know, and you know, we have to go on the facts and the figures that we have. And so we've sent out a team there for 3 weeks, and part of the job of that team will be to ascertain the real numbers of Nigerians that are there, because it's still a very hazy issue.
All right, I'm sure this question, Honourable Minister, I'd also like you to respond to it because it's directly related to you. But Honourable Abike Dabiri, in one of the video clips our correspondent, brought back, I saw the Honourable Minister speak a little more tougher than his normal self about negotiations, about getting those Nigerians who are probably in prisons or on death row repatriated to come here to serve the remaining terms. Is there any headway with regards to that?
Oh yes, absolutely. The Honourable Minister made it clear that Nigeria will not tolerate any inhuman treatment to its citizens, and the negotiations actually went very well, and he was categorical that will not accept or tolerate such inhuman treatment. And yes, there's a headway in that regard. I'm sure the Honourable Minister can, as leader of the delegation, can talk more about that.
Yes, you were a lot more tougher than I've ever seen you.
Well, I think the important thing is to achieve objectives. If one is just screaming and shouting from rooftops and nothing is achieved, I mean, it's pointless. But the point is that we don't have a mutual exchange program for prisoners with Libya. So the legal framework for that is not there. But we made the point to them, and they're quite flexible on that, and their position is that if we make a formal request, which we're going to now do, that we can, they'll be flexible on it. They're very, very keen, the Libyans, because they've come under a lot of international pressure, about what's going on there. So they're very keen to, I think, really show the world that they're very reasonable and that the government is in no way complicit in what is happening, that it does not represent their values. So I think we can exploit that to also, get prisoner transfers back to Nigeria.
All right, just to excuse me, that's just to indicate that we have reactions, excuse me, please, coming in from our viewers by way of tweets, and those tweets, some of them have been scrolling at the foot of the screen there. But let's take some others now. This one from Amobola Babs. It says, kudos to all agencies of government involved so far in this exercise. That's still the mission to Libya and the evacuation of irregular Nigerian migrants. However, it is not enough to repatriate the hapless victims. We must put down a concrete mechanism that will guarantee a life after repatriation.
All right, and Cecilia Okoroma, also your tweet is here, and it reads, NAPTIP must tackle the issue of human trafficking from the bud, that's the home front. It's now a booming business, even at your own backyard.
This is from Philip Gomera. It says, Honourable Minister, the DG NAPTIP said in the course of this discussion that there are other camps in addition to the ones that the government runs in Libya. Were you able to visit such other camps? If not, or if so, what is the fate of Nigerians there?
And again, a second tweet from Cecilia Okoroma, and it reads, sentiments aside, hope you are all scrutinizing returnees to avoid invading our country with militants that will destroy Nigeria.
Dele Jack Solomon has this: as the smuggling networks in Libya are becoming stronger, more organized and better equipped, it's now expedient that the IOM, that's the International Organization for Migration, the UN, AU, EU, ECOWAS, and governments of various nations come together to tackle this inhuman act head-on before it poses a global threat to world peace. Poses a threat to global peace.
All right, we have also been rolling, of course, the tweets. You can see some of them right on your screen.
All right, Honourable Minister, that's the question there for you with regard to whether you have a sense of what is happening to other Nigerians who are at locations that were unreachable in the course of your first visit to Libya.
Yes, we do. We do. As the Honourable Abike mentioned, that there are Nigerians who live in Libya, and so they also provide a lot of intelligence to us. So yes, indeed, and we are making efforts to retrieve those. It might be a little bit more complex, the negotiation process, because it's not going to be as transparent as the ones with the government, but we're certainly engaged as we speak on those.
Are there those in the camps, in the detention camps, that are not willing to return?
We saw a few of them that were not willing to return, but because of the fears they had, some of them asked questions like, what will happen to me when I come back? Do you have anything for me? I've lost everything I have. And we assured them that yes, the government was going to do something for them. And then they said, okay, in that case, we are going to come back. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Just, Honorable Abike, let's bring you again. Potentially, is this going to be an intractable problem, or we think that we can get on top of it as a people, as a country? Because I mean, there are viewers who are indicating to us via tweet that right now, even as the program is going on, there are persons who are in transit. Still?
I think it's a problem we can get over. And first is, those that are returning should be advocates of, you know what, it's not going back there. For instance, there were some that were actually on the streets that we met who got to know the Nigerians were coming back and they wanted to come back. And then they were at the holding camp with their bags packed. And we looked at them. One of them had about 3 bags, 2 bags. Like, what do you have in these bags? We don't even have those many bags, no matter who you are. And she said to us, well, I want to go home. I want to go home. I'm not in detention. Yes, I've made a little money here. I can't even send the money home. I can't do anything with it. So I decided to buy a few things and I just want to go home. And I've also realized that there's no place like home. And they all, you know, chanted that. So the mindset is what needs to change. You know, if we were surviving that way before, it's a bit more difficult. And now for the first time, the federal government of Nigeria has taken the bull by the horns. This has never happened before. Yes, there have been a series of evacuations, I think once, but this is the first time the president is sending such a high-powered delegation. And Libya recognized and appreciated that, and they kept telling the delegation, you know, as the minister was talking to them, that, you know what, you have a president that is respected all over the world and will do anything to support you and ensure that we put an end to this. So I believe that it's a problem that can be solved. And with the world attention paid to this problem, it's not a challenge to everybody. I was watching a program on one station, a foreign station, a few days ago. Migrants in France, in Paris, are sleeping on the streets. The president promised accommodation. He can't give it to them. You know, so even the world is getting tougher. The best place to be is your country, your home. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are issues to go through. Yes, we're going through a difficult time, but that difficult time will not last. So we need to talk to one another, encourage one another, and government must perform its responsibility, which this administration is doing, tackling corruption, tackling insecurity, and working on the economy. So it's a problem that can be solved, and it's a problem that will be solved. Now, this committee will continue to work on, you know, the other issues of what happens when they get back. So it's a continuous thing, and I believe there's something we all should work together to solve. Look, one of the guys we're speaking with, the IOM guy in Libya, said he came to Nigeria and he could not understand the paradox. He was in Nigeria, he went to villages, he went to cities, he went to the interior, you know, the hinterland, and he really could not understand when they talked to them why they're living with the country that he saw. He couldn't understand the paradox. So really, it's a lot of work for every one of us to do, and I believe we can achieve results and we can achieve successes.
Thank you very much. Apparently, we're not communicating to ourselves properly, and sometimes we tend to exaggerate the domestic challenges that we have. They say some persons will say all kinds of terrible things about Nigeria, and then a young person, you know, who is so impressionable will think that, look, my destiny doesn't lie here, and that it lies elsewhere. And then they go to the desert, and a number of them perish, and others become slaves. But just clear, just one aspect. I'm sorry. The Honourable Minister, let's get your closing thoughts on this. Is this the new phase of citizen diplomacy?
I think it's an extension. As we said, you know, it's nothing new. You know, we've been going through this for a long period of time. But I think that the political buy-in, and especially the leadership of Mr. President, is probably what is decisive going forward now. You know, that we have that leadership at the top, and I think that you know, all our aspirations in respect of citizens diplomacy can be much more effectively realized with that. Yes.
You have a timeline for ending this mission?
Hopefully, the sooner the better. We would like to think that, you know, in 3 weeks' time, that all the, you know, migrants will be back. And so the time frame we have, the initial time frame, as I said, is 3 weeks from now.
All right, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyama, we'd like to appreciate you for coming to share this with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
We also like to appreciate Honorable Abike Dabire, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Diaspora Matters. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you.
And finally, Director General of NAPTIP, Julie Oka-Donley. Many thanks to you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's it on this segment of our program. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
Chief. Good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit day, my body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me jab questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I am sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and as you must have heard in the news, just yesterday, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, released the timetable for political activities ahead of the 2019 general elections. Now, according to that timetable, political campaigns for presidential and National Assembly elections will commence on the 18th of October 2018, that's this year, while campaigns for governorship and state houses of assembly elections are to kick off on the 1st of December 2018. We have more from our correspondent, Ifeanyi Okafor.
The decision of the Commission to fix election dates is to engender certainty in the electoral calendar and to enable all stakeholders to prepare adequately for elections. The sequence of the polls begin with the Presidential and National Assembly elections, followed by the Governorship, State Assembly and FCT Area Council elections.
The Commission fixed Saturday, 16th February 2019 as the date for Presidential and National Assembly elections, while governorship and state assembly elections will hold on 2nd March 2019.
The Commission will conduct elections for 1,558 constituencies made up of 1 presidential constituency, 29 governorship constituencies out of 36, 109 senatorial districts, 360 federal constituencies, and 991 state assembly constituencies. Others are 6 area council chairmen as well as 62 councillorship positions for the FCT.
All right. Joining us in the studio right now to discuss matters arising from the timetable released by INEC yesterday is the INEC Director in charge of Voter Education and Publicity, Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozie. Mr. Osaze-Ozie, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, just give us a sense of the rationale behind the timetable that has been released, including, for instance, the segregation of the kickoff of campaigns for Presidential National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly and Governorship.
Well, thank you very much. The outline of the thresholds that have to be met and the times for doing things is actually both the Constitution and the Electoral Act. It is such that it outlines when campaigns, for example, that you mentioned, can take place. It cannot start earlier by political parties in public, cannot start earlier than 90 days to the election, and must cease 24 hours to the election. So having fixed the discretion is for the Commission, according to the Constitution, to fix dates for the elections. So having fixed the dates of the elections, you now work backwards. When is 90 days to the election? And that's why for the Presidential and National Assembly election taking place on the 16th of February, you work 90 days backwards. While for those of the governorship and state houses of assembly, the same principle applies. That's why you have two different dates for this. But it's quite clearly spelled out in the Electoral Act. So basically, we're guided by those legal provisions.
When we were having our newspaper review, and Bayo Toby was right here with us, we discussed this point, and the practical reality is that the nature of campaigns, it's all involved, it's all encompassing. So you have the black letter of the law, but is this reality likely to be brought, under the law, as it were, from the convention that we have? I know that you're a lawyer as well, so.
Yes. Definitely, there's some gray area because when it's a campaign and when it's not a campaign. So basically, the distinction has to be drawn. But unfortunately, the law does not define what campaigns means. In every democratic setting, meetings are allowed, processions are allowed, and such. But when you there's some gray areas and there's some very clear-cut areas. When I come out and say Uzi wants to be president in 2019, I start campaign along that line. That's a campaign.
Congratulations.
There are several Uzis, not me. there are issues that are arising there for those gray areas. But certainly, if you read the text or heard the text of the chairman's briefing, he did say that, look, we can succeed only with the cooperation with all, and everybody, both the commission and the political parties, the candidates, aspirants, have to abide by these guidelines. Basically, I think it's so that they don't overheat the polity. That's why I say, look, those who are governing, let them concentrate on governance. Those who are aspiring, the aspirants can meet their party members because primaries are only limited to party members. So I think that is basically why the law is there.
I'd like for you again to clarify, so that everybody understands what is meant by campaign, by INEC, provisions and the Electoral Act.
Yes.
What does campaign mean? And when there is an infraction, what are the measures that INEC might likely take?
Well, regrettably, as I said, campaign is not defined in the Constitution or in the Electoral Act. And as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been a judicial interpretation or definition provided. So we are left to our own devices. And our approach is to consult with our stakeholders. Look, there are certain clear-cut things that are campaigns. If I put up a billboard and say, Mr. X wants to be governor of this particular state in 2019, that is an outright campaign. But as I said, it doesn't prevent people from having meetings. It doesn't prevent processions that are duly when you go in accordance with the laws.
We've seen such board posters all over across the country.
Yes, we have. Those are aspirants who are probably aspiring to be. I'm not too sure. I've not seen any for 2019 anyway. But in the past, we've seen billboards and posters earlier than the scheduled time. But when you approach the parties, they say, "Well, we are not the ones doing that." Our aspirants, okay, rein your aspirants in. Make sure they act in accordance with the rules and the guidelines provided by the law. For infractions of the law, where punishment is prescribed and prosecution is to be undertaken by the commission after due investigation in accordance with due process of law.
When now is the official commencement of campaigns? Is it October or November?
Campaigns by political parties in public, and those are the exact words of the statute, in public. Starts 90 days to the election. So 90 days to the presidential election is, I think, is the 18th of
November,
October, November, December, January. Yes, November.
All right. But one point I would like you to speak to. Yes, you will say, look, we have a copy of the Constitution 1999 that's amended 3 alterations. And then, which electoral act are you working on? Because at the same point, the National Assembly is proceeding with amendment to aspects of the Constitution. You also have proposals to amend the Electoral Act that we used in the 2015 election. Yes. Now, suppose there is a game change with regard to the provisions in the law. What will happen?
Well, you work with the law as it exists. I cannot work with projection, what the law is, or the proposals that they're just like proposals. So what the law, the time to release yesterday is in accordance with the Electoral Act 2010 as amended and the 1999 Constitution as amended. The Senate has passed its own version of the Electoral Act, but it still is yet to be passed by the House of Representatives. And until both houses pass the things and resolve whatever differences there are, and the president assents to it, it doesn't become law. So we must work with what is. If there's a change in the law tomorrow, then we will amend. If it affects this timetable and schedule of activities, then we will amend accordingly to bring it in line with the law.
Okay, Mr. Jose, I know you will agree with me because you were on this program even during the campaign process, the last period. There was we heard a lot of hate speeches, vulgar, foul languages and all that. How does INEC hope to perform its gatekeeping role this time around?
That is a major task, and it's something we've been looking into. But it's not just INEC. I think there are other ministries and extra-ministerial departments and agencies that also have responsibility here. For example, the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission for the broadcast media. And working with such regulatory bodies, working with professional associations and bodies like the NPAN with Bonn and such organizations, we say, look, if you don't give them platforms, the platforms is the oxygen for this. If you don't give them platforms, then it will not appeal to the mass media. And then we know we can deal more with the parties and the candidates or aspirants or supporters, quote unquote, who are involved in some of these hate speeches. Yes, well, it's a great concern.
I'm wondering, Mr. Jose, as of the last count, we had some 67 registered political parties. You were with us on the program when we discussed the Anambra governorship election. There were 37 candidates, and there are also proposals, there are also reports that INEC will register many more political parties. In the event that all the parties decide to field a candidate, say, for the presidential election, we're going to have, a roll of ballot paper, and how do you intend to manage this? 67 already. I mean, some observers are saying that's a crowd.
Let me correct that. I believe there are 68 actually.
Oh, 68. Oh, you have
yes, because 21 parties were duly registered. We presented with their certificates in about an hour's time, 10 o'clock this morning. Oh, that's 21. But there's one that also went to court to get order INEC. The court order that INEC should register that party. So that's 22, and then we have the 46 that were previously in existence. Okay. Yes, a lot of people say it's unwieldy, but don't forget, again, as I always say, I've come here several times to say, look, this is what the law says. And recall that when INEC put certain conditions, for example, having offices in at least 24 states of the Federation, some people went to court, challenged and said, these associations were successful because that is not what the law says. That was when Balari Musa and the people like late Gani Fawemi went to court and challenged INEC for that. And people some people were quite pleased and said, open up the space. So we have opened up the space in accordance with the law. And I don't know whether more will be registered, all that meets the requirements at the particular time, because 6 months election must stop that, will be registered. So there's all
there are talks.
You'll stop that when you stop registration when?
6 months to the elections.
That should be sometime, if you pull that back, around about August, I believe.
Yes, that's about July or so.
We've had talks of merger, between political parties. Yes. Is that been considered?
It's not being considered. It's for the political parties who wish to merge to consider it. Yes, quite conceivable. Don't forget, prior to the 2015, just before 2015 elections, several parties merged. So yes, it's quite conceivable that some parties will agree to merge.
Mr. Lowale, Kesley, have any questions?
No, not anymore. Let's see when the actors, get on the stage, they will get to Sazel's. We'll get to Sazel's back.
and we do look forward to an election free of hate speech. Honestly, we look forward to that.
Indeed. That's the responsibility of the gladiators.
Yes, and also the umpire.
Regulators.
Yes, and also the umpire.
Of course, we hope now that some of the menaces that we had seen with written elections, inconclusive, card reader, and all of that, ANEC is working on those.
Well, let's not go to that debate of inconclusiveness again, because we'll go back to reasons for that. And don't forget, we're talking about a rule for ballot papers. Don't forget that there are proposals that independent candidates will be allowed in the nearest future.
That's right. So we'll see. But those candidates must come up before August. Director of Voter Education and Publicity of Independent National Electoral Commission. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right. All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Let's quickly take a look at a peep into the weather forecast for the rest of today.
Welcome to the weather forecast. Dust haze conditions are expected to prevail across the extreme northern parts of the country within the next 24 hours, while haziness is expected to prevail across the central parts of the country. The inland areas of the south should be in partly cloudy to cloudy conditions, while the coastal belt should begin the day with mist and foggy conditions, which is expected to transit into cloudiness, although there are slight prospects of isolated rains over Port Harcourt, Calabar and Yenagoa axis during the afternoon period. I leave you with the temperature details. Thank you for watching.
All right, we'd like to thank the Met Office there for the weather report. And that, of course, brings to a close today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We appreciate your tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time at 7 o'clock in the morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
I am Claire Delabo Abdulrazak. Thank you for all your tweets, and we hope you keep them coming. Tomorrow is yet another day. But don't forget to watch a repeat broadcast. Same time, 5 minutes past 5 later today on Channel 101 Start Time, NT News 24. From all of us, goodbye.